Have you ever imagined being a king, but instead buried alive because people thought you were dead? This is a true story that happened to a king from England, a story that may sound more like a horror movie than history. The story begins in the 11th century, in an English kingdom full of intrigue and war. In the midst of a fierce competition for the throne, a king known as Harold I, the Crow's Foot, emerged. However, his name is not only known for his leadership, but also for the tragic fate he had to suffer, a fate that not many people know. Harold I, who once occupied the throne as King of England, was a tough and brave figure. However, his reign did not last long. At that time, kings were often forced to deal with rebellions and attacks from outsiders, but this one was worse than the others. After experiencing a series of fierce battles in 1035, Harold was involved in a major conflict with his own brothers, which eventually led him to the most shocking event in history. After his defeat, Harold's political enemies decided to end things in a terrible way. They made a very evil decision, assuming Harold was dead. But in reality, Harold was still alive, just collapsed in a very bad state, barely moving. However, his motionless body was quickly buried in a coffin, as if there was no hope anymore. Of course, things weren't that simple. After some time, a priest who was there began to feel strange. When the casket was opened, who knew that Harold was still breathing? However, even though he was saved, Harold's fate did not improve. His body was already very weak, and even though he tried to fight, betrayal and political wars continued to haunt his life. Harold ended up spending the rest of his life in agony until he died not long after the incident. Ironically, his death was even more tragic than when he was almost buried alive. What can we learn from this story? In addition to showing the political brutality of the time, Harold's story also shows how history is often more horrific than fiction. Harold I, known as Harold the Crow's Feet, may be forgotten by most, but his tragic story remains a reminder of the brutality and political tensions that once existed. Curious about more other scary stories? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss other surprising facts.